For centuries, human society has treated orgasm as this confusing mystery. Or we just think of it as simply a finish line, a magical switch that gets flipped at the very end of a physical process. But honestly, that perspective fundamentally misunderstands our own biology. It sets up these totally unrealistic expectations, and worst of all, it completely ignores the beautiful, staggering complexity of what's actually happening inside us.
So what actually happens beneath the surface during this peak state? Well, to find out, we have to map the uncharted wiring of the human body. By looking past all the myths and breaking down the precise mechanical reality of pleasure, we can finally discover what truly goes on when the body reaches the point of letting go.
To guide us through this explainer, we really need to anchor ourselves in one fundamental biological truth. Orgasm is a body-wide reflex, and it's shaped entirely by the brain. It's not just some localized sensation, but a brief, highly coordinated biological event. And it's built on a very distinct wave: build-up, peak, release, and recovery. Once you look at it through this lens, the mystery just kind of fades away, revealing some absolutely fascinating science.
Okay, let's dive into part 1, the body's pleasure circuit.
I want you to think of this internal circuit kind of like building a campfire. A single spark is rarely enough to get it going, right? You need kindling, airflow, and a bit of time. In our bodies, sensation is just that initial spark. It's the starting input. Our sensory nerves act exactly like a smoke detector in a house. The detector doesn't invent the fire, it simply senses the environment and sends a signal. Well, in sexual response, your sensory nerves are simply reporting what the body is currently experiencing.
But like we said, a spark alone isn't enough. Next comes arousal. This is the body's readiness state. Imagine preheating an oven. A cold oven and a hot oven are going to bake very differently. Your body has to prepare. Blood flow increases, muscles tense up, and sensitivity shifts. This buildup fundamentally alters your internal conditions, setting the stage for the main event.
Now, the nervous system isn't just some passive wire. It's an active, highly sensitive decision-making filter. It is constantly weighing safety, intensity, and context. Picture a microphone placed a little too close to a speaker. In a controlled loop, the sound catches, it grows, and it amplifies. Your brain and spinal cord act as this exact kind of feedback loop, powerfully amplifying the biological signal until it finally peaks.
And this is exactly why the specific trigger matters far less than simply crossing the threshold. Imagine a pot of water sitting over a flame. The heat builds quietly, almost invisibly, until enough thermal energy accumulates to force a sudden, unmistakable change in state. It boils. Well, the human body is identical. It's all about total nervous energy finally crossing an absolute biological threshold.
So when that biological threshold is finally crossed, the result is physical release. Pelvic muscle contractions are the literal physical expression of this climax. Think of a tightly coiled spring that's finally allowed to snap back to its resting state. The body isn't just feeling pleasure, it's actively and safely discharging all that built-up nervous tension.
But the circuit doesn't just abruptly end at the peak. It has to transition into recovery. The nervous system needs to settle back down. Picture a massive, heavy locomotive pulling smoothly into the station after a high-speed journey. The energy dissipates into a restful, settling phase. Understanding this cooldown really changes how we view the entirety of the experience.
When we zoom out and view this interconnected circuit as a whole, a pretty profound truth emerges. If any single condition, say your attention, your mood, or simply your sense of safety is misaligned, the system just won't reach the threshold. And you know what? That doesn't mean something is broken. It simply means your biological system is responding with perfect accuracy to the environment it happens to be in.
Which brings us to part 2, a total state change. As the science brilliantly reveals, the body doesn't just have an orgasm, it literally changes state. Imagine a room fundamentally transforming from bright and chaotic to dim and quiet. The physical objects in the room remain exactly the same, but the state of the room is entirely different. Orgasm forces the entire nervous system across that exact kind of boundary.
One of the most immediate impacts here is on the autonomic nervous system. It functions exactly like a pressure valve on a steam engine. Releasing the steam doesn't destroy the machine. It just lowers the internal tension, allowing the whole system to return to a healthy, manageable baseline. This right here is the mechanical reason behind that profound, whole-body stress relief. And your brain is an intensely active participant in this shift. If human attention is like a flashlight, usually darting around to illuminate daily stress, tasks, and problems,
During this state change, the beam narrows. It pulls away from problem solving and focuses with blinding intensity entirely on embodied sensation. It is a profound neurological reset.
This mental reset is mirrored by a huge physical unburdening. It's like a clenched fist that's been holding tight for hours, finally opening up and letting go. The pelvic muscles ease, and this deep unclenching leads directly to the heavy, peaceful sleepiness that so many people experience in the recovery phase.
Now let's look at part 3, when the circuit misses. Because the brain acts as a filter, constantly, unconsciously asking, is this safe? Can I let go? The effects of this circuit aren't always going to be positive, and variation is completely normal. If the context or your body state doesn't align, the buildup can actually result in frustration, emotional discomfort, or even physical irritation. When the circuit misses, it simply means the conditions weren't perfectly aligned, not that the body has somehow failed.
This leads us naturally into our final chapter, Part 4, Redefining Sexual Well-Being.
This brings us to a wonderfully liberating scientific reality. Orgasm is merely one possible expression of a healthy sexual response system. It is absolutely not the definition of health itself. Human well-being is way too complex to be measured by a single bodily event. A highly satisfying, healthy sex life can exist entirely without them. Human health is not a scoreboard.
Ultimately, the value of this peak state isn't that it proves something about you or your relationship. Its true value is that it reveals just how tightly our body, our brain, and our environment are interwoven. When we stop viewing it as a mystery to be solved or a performance to be measured, we can finally appreciate our biology for what it really is, a brilliantly integrated system. So the next time you think about physical pleasure, ask yourself, are you just focused on racing to a finish line, or are you finally ready to listen to the magnificent interconnected circuit of your own body?